You can take the girl out of the trailer. My mother-in-law laughed at my manners in front of everyone. By the end of dinner, I owned the future of her family's firm. The color drains from my face. I feel it go, the way you feel a wave pull the sand out from under your heels, while 40 people at the Ashley Oaks Country Club pretend to study their crab cakes. Courtney Vance is standing over my chair in a coral St. John knit that cost more than my first car, holding her glass of Chardonnay at a careful angle, and she is laughing. Not a small laugh, a performance pitched to carry across the terrace, over the boxwood hedges, all the way to the 18th green. "Oh, sweetheart," she says, loud enough for the Pinckneys 2 tables over. "Did you get dressed in the dark? And the fork? No, honey, we start from the outside." She turns to the table, palms up, inviting them in. "You can take the girl out of the trailer park. You just can't teach her which glass is hers." Ice cracks in a pitcher somewhere behind me. The terrace smells of pimento cheese and cut grass and Courtney's Chanel No. 5. Somebody titters. My husband Daniel studies the tablecloth like it holds the secret to a long marriage. I set down the salad fork I'd apparently chosen in error. I twisted my grandmother's garnet ring once around my finger, the way I've done since I was 9 years old, and I smiled. What Courtney did not know, what none of them at that long white table knew, was that she had just mocked the manners of the single most important person in the room. She thought she was looking at her son's embarrassing little wife. She was looking at the woman who could close her doors by dessert. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back, because the fork isn't where this started. It only felt like the end of something. Let me tell it in order. My name is Iris Vance. I was born Iris Kowalczyk in 1984 in a single-wide trailer off Route 17 outside Hardeeville, South Carolina. 31 miles and one entire universe from the terrace where Courtney decided to teach me table settings in front of the Junior League. My mother, Renata, cleaned rooms at a Days Inn for $6.75 an hour and came home smelling of bleach and other people's cigarettes. My father left when I was 4. I remember a truck door and a taillight and not much else. Renata raised me and my brother Tomasz on tips, food stamps, and a stubbornness that could bend rebar. She kept a jar of Vicks on the nightstand and rubbed it on our chests every winter until we were teenagers, whether we had a cough or not. She believed in it the way some people believe in God. The only jewelry my mother owned was a garnet ring that had belonged to her mother in Poznan. It was worth maybe $1,200, the jeweler told me years later, and that was being generous about the gold. When my mother died of ovarian cancer in 2009, she was 51. The whole thing took 11 weeks. The ring was the one thing she left me. I have worn it every day since. I was wearing it at the club. Remember it. Here is the part Courtney would have paid real money not to know. That trailer park girl was good at exactly one thing, and it was not folding fitted sheets. It was numbers. I could look at a lemonade stand and tell you why it would fail by August. I got a full scholarship to the College of Charleston in 2002. I waited tables at a shrimp shack on Shem Creek for $2.13 an hour, plus tips to cover the rest, and then a fellowship to Wharton. By 29, I was a principal at a venture fund. By 36, the year all of this happened, I was a general partner at Halyard Capital, a firm that managed just under $600 million. I want to be plain about what that means, in kitchen table English, because the whole story turns on it. My job was to find small, brilliant companies before anyone else did, hand them millions of dollars, and take a large piece of them in return. When I write a check, I don't just lend money. I buy a chair in the room where the company decides its own future, and I keep that chair. I met Daniel Vance in 2013 at a fundraiser for the Charleston Waterkeeper over a table of deviled eggs neither of us wanted. He was 34, an architect who actually built things, with sawdust under his nails and no idea what Series B meant, and I loved that about him. He didn't know what I was worth, and it never once came up. We married 18 months later, barefoot on Sullivan's Island, with 41 guests and a shrimp boil. I wore a plain linen dress off the rack at a shop on King Street, and I have never felt richer. Courtney was cool at that wedding, but cool is not cruel, and I gave her grace. Her husband Walter had died in 2011 and left her the family business, Vance Brand Partners, a marketing and branding firm on Broad Street that Walter had built from a 2-desk operation in 1979 into a shop of 38 employees. Courtney ran it now, with Daniel's older brother Grant as the nominal president. She had built her whole identity on being Mrs. Walter Vance of the Charleston Vances, on the club, on the Boxwoods, on knowing which glass was hers. I understood her. I even pitied her a little. A woman clutching a set of rules that hard is usually terrified of what happens if the rules ever stop mattering. For a while, it was good. I want you to know that because it makes the rest make sense. The first 3 years, Courtney and I found an uneasy truce. She taught me about Charleston, the difference between south of Broad and everywhere else, why you never, ever ask what someone does for a living. I brought her a jar of fig preserves I'd learned to put up from Renata's recipe, and she actually smiled. And for one afternoon, in her kitchen, with the ceiling fan ticking, we were almost something like family. I kept a chipped blue mug at her house, my mug, for the coffee I drank on Sunday mornings. Small things, the scaffolding of a life. Then the notes started going wrong, one at a time. So quietly I could almost tell myself I imagined them. The first was Laurel, Grant's wife, my sister-in-law, Laurel Ravenel Vance, of the Ravenels, who had a pew at St. Michael's since 1761. Laurel was everything Courtney wished I were. Born into it, fluent in the code, size 4, a tennis game, and a maiden name that opened doors. Courtney began every comparison the same way. Laurel would know, she'd say. Laurel understands how things are done. At Thanksgiving 2017, Courtney seated me below the salt, next to the 8-year-olds, and gave Laurel the chair at her right hand. I said nothing. I filed it away in the quiet place inside me where I keep things, the place my mother built when she taught me that you never let them see the ledger you're keeping. The second note. Vance Brand Partners was in trouble, though Courtney would sooner have died than say so. Walter's old accounts had aged out. The firm was doing about $7 million a year in billings, and shrinking, and 38 jobs depended on it. I knew this the way I know most things, not from family, who never discussed money at the table, but from the numbers, because numbers are the one language nobody can keep secret from me. The third note came in the spring of 2018, and this is where the whole board tilts, so stay with me. Halyard led a $48 million Series B in a biotech company called North Star Bio, a lab out on Clements Ferry Road working on rapid sepsis diagnostics, the kind of thing that saves a life in a hospital hallway at 3 a.m. I sat on North Star's board. I had negotiated, personalize, protective provisions that most founders would faint at. I held voting proxies from 2 other funds, which meant that on the questions that mattered, I didn't hold one vote. I held a majority. North Star did what I advised, or North Star did not get its next dollar. And North Star Bio needed a rebrand and a national launch campaign. Their CEO, a brilliant, anxious man named Vikram Shah, asked me if I knew any good local shops. I could have named 20. I named 1. I recused myself carefully, disclosed the family tie in writing to my partners, and let Vikram's team run their own bake-off. Vance Brand Partners won it clean. They were genuinely good. Walter had taught them well. And in June of 2018, they signed North Star Bio to a 2-year contract at a retainer of $2.2 million a year. Do the arithmetic Courtney never bothered to do. $2.2 million out of 7. North Star Bio was, overnight, the single biggest client Vance Brand Partners had. It was the difference between 38 paychecks and a fire sale. It was the Boxwoods, the club dues, the Coral St. John knit. It was, though not one of them ever suspected it, mine. I had put it on their table. I could take it off. I never told them. Not Daniel, not Grant, not Courtney. Partly it was compliance. You do not gossip about your portfolio companies at Sunday supper. But partly, if I'm honest, it was a small, warm coal I kept banked in my chest, a thing that was only mine. I told myself I would never use it. I told myself a lot of things. Now watch the erosion, because it accelerates. Courtney started introducing me at parties as Daniel's wife, Iris. She does something with computers. I never can keep it straight. The first time, I laughed. The fourth time, I understood it was a decision. She once told the table at the Charleston Yacht Club that I'd grown up rough, bless her heart, but Daniel's always had a soft spot for a project. I was standing 4 feet away, holding a plate of she-crab soup. I set the plate down very gently and went to the ladies' room and pressed a cold paper towel to my throat until I could speak again. Then I came back and complimented her earrings. My mother taught me that, too. You do not hand them the satisfaction. Daniel saw some of it, and not enough. That's just Mama, he'd say in the car, one hand on my knee. She doesn't mean it the way it sounds. He wasn't a coward, my husband. He was worse in a way. He was a good man who had spent 40 years being managed by a woman who wielded disappointment like a scalpel, and he'd never learned that you're allowed to bleed her in return. I didn't push. I'd married him barefoot on the sand, and I meant every word. And I still believe, that a marriage is not a thing you burn down because his mother is cruel. But I began, quietly, to understand that if a line ever got drawn, I would have to be the one holding the pen. There was one person in that family who saw all of it. Bess, Elizabeth Vance, Daniel's younger sister, 33, a middle school art teacher who'd never chased $1 in her life and was the richest-hearted person in the whole clan. Bess started sitting next to me at every gathering, on purpose, a small mutiny in a cardigan. After the she-crab soup, she found me by the valet stand and squeezed my hand and said, I heard her. I hear her. You're worth 10 of Laurel, and she knows it. That's the whole problem. I have never forgotten that. When you are being slowly erased, one person who says, I see you, is worth more than money. And I say that as a woman who has counted a great deal of money. Which brings us, at last, to the club, to the Fork. It was the last Saturday in September of 2020. The occasion was a dinner Courtney had arranged at Ashley Oaks. 38 members of the family and the firm in the Charleston branding world, ostensibly to celebrate the Vance Brand Partners contract with North Star Bio, which was up for a 2-year renewal in October. Vikram Shah of North Star had been invited as guest of honor. He couldn't make it. He sent regrets and a junior VP named Danielle. And so the dinner became, as these things do, less about the client and more about Courtney's court. She had seated me, again, at the far end. She had put Laurel at her right. I'd come from a board meeting, and I was wearing a navy sheath dress I'd bought for $38 at a consignment shop on Coleman Boulevard, because it was well cut and it fit, and I have never in my life spent money to impress people who count stitches. My grandmother's garnet ring was on my right hand. I twisted it once, sitting down, the way I do, and then the salad course came, and I reached for the wrong fork, tired and half listening, and Courtney saw her opening and she took it, in front of the Pinckneys, in front of the firm's whole junior staff, in front of Danielle from North Star, in front of my husband, who looked at the tablecloth. You can take the girl out of the trailer park, you just can't teach her which glass is hers. The laughter went around the table like a plate being passed. I felt the blood leave my face. I felt 9 years old. I felt my mother's bleach and cigarette hands, and the Vicks and the food stamps, and every single hour of the $2.13 an hour I'd worked, so that I would never, ever be at the mercy of a woman like Courtney Vance. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw the wine, though the animal in me wanted to. I sat very still, and I felt the last warm thing I'd been protecting go cold and clear and quiet, like water freezing from the bottom of a pond up. Something in me simply clicked shut. I excused myself. In the ladies' room, under a chandelier that cost more than my mother made in a year, I took out my phone and I did not call Daniel. I called Paula. Paula Okonkwo had been my roommate at Wharton and was now, at 41, the sharpest corporate attorney in the Southeast and the closest thing I had to a sister. She answered on the second ring because she always answered on the second ring. "Talk to me," she said. "Pull the North Star file," I said. "The board proxies, the renewal timeline on the Vance contract, and the termination for convenience clause. I want it clean, and I want it tonight." There was a pause. Paula knew the whole map. She'd papered the proxies herself. "Iris," she said carefully, "you're sure, because if we do this, we don't half do it. This ends a family thing." I looked at myself in the mirror, 36 years old, 600 million under management, a navy dress a snob had just mocked, my grandmother's ring on my finger. "She did it in front of everyone," I said, "so it ends in front of everyone, by the end of dinner." "Give me 20 minutes, Paula said, and hung up. Here is what I did not do. I did not go back and make a scene over the salad course. Rage is loud and cheap, and it hands the other person your dignity as a souvenir. What I had instead was better and colder, and I had spent 18 years learning how to build it. I had leverage, and leverage, unlike a slapped face, does not fade by morning. While the club served the entree, pan-seared grouper, haricots verts, a wine I'm sure had a story, I built the machine, in my lap, under a white tablecloth, one text at a time. Text 1 to Paula. Confirmed. She sent back a PDF of the executed proxy agreements, the documents in which two other North Star investors, Beacon Fund and the Rourke Family Office, had assigned me their board votes on any matter concerning vendor and marketing contracts. 14 pages. My name on every signature block. It meant that on the question of whether North Star Bio renewed with Vance Brand Partners, I was not one voice at the table. I was 3 of the 5 votes. I was the table. Text 2 to Vikram Shah, who I knew for a fact was awake because he is always awake. I need North Star to hold the Vance renewal. Do not sign in October. I'll explain Monday. Trust me. He wrote back a single word in 90 seconds. Done. 11 years of my judgment making his company millions had bought me that word. Text 3 to Danielle, the junior VP sitting 19 feet away, eating grouper and thinking this was a pleasant dinner. Hi, Danielle. Iris Vance, Halyard, North Star's lead investor. Small world. Would you step out to the veranda for 2 minutes? I watched her read it. I watched the color drain from her face. Funny how it travels. And I watched her set down her fork, the correct fork, and rise. I met her by the boxwoods. I told her in 90 seconds exactly who I was and exactly what was true. That Halyard controlled North Star, that I controlled the vendor vote through the proxies, and that the renewal her hosts were toasting tonight was not going to happen. I told her none of it was her fault and none of it would touch her, and I gave her Paula's card and told her to have North Star's counsel call Monday. She was 26 years old and very smart, and she understood in about 4 seconds that she had stumbled into something far above her pay grade. I didn't know, she said. Almost nobody does, I said. That's rather the point. Then I went back inside, and I sat down at my place below the salt, and I waited for dessert. Grant tapped his glass at 9:40. He stood, Walter's son, 42, soft in the way of men who inherited their confidence, and made a toast to the partnership that's carried this firm into its next chapter. And everyone raised a glass to the North Star Bio contract, the $2.2 million a year, the thing that kept the lights on. And Courtney beamed at her right hand where Laurel sat, and I raised my consignment store self and my grandmother's ring and drank to it too. And then I set down my glass and I stood up. Since we're celebrating the North Star account, I said, My voice was quiet. Quiet carries better than loud in a room that's straining to hear you. I think there are a few things this table should know before the check comes. Courtney's smile did not move, but her eyes did. Iris, dear, we don't talk shop at North Star Bio, I said, raised its Series B in 2018, $48 million. The fund that led that round, that put its partner on North Star's board, that holds voting proxies over North Star's vendor decisions, I let it sit for 1 second. 2, is Halyard Capital. I'm a general partner at Halyard. I led the round. I've held the board seat for 2 years. The terrace had gone very quiet. You could hear the ice melting. In plain English, I said, because I wanted every junior staffer in that room to grasp it instantly. The biggest client this firm has, the account you're toasting, the $2.2 million a year that pays for this dinner, is a company I control. I'm the one who put North Star on your table. I recommended you. Not Laurel's family, not the club, me, the girl from the trailer park. I have watched a great deal of money change hands in my life, and I have never seen anything move as fast as the color left Courtney Vance's face. It went the way a tide goes out, all at once and then not there. She reached for the back of a chair. The coral knit suddenly looked like a costume on her. That's not, she started. I laid a single sheet of paper on the white tablecloth and slid it down the table, past the grouper bones and the melting sorbet until it stopped in front of her. It was Paula's summary, printed at the club's business center 20 minutes earlier. 1 page, plain type. The North Star Vance renewal, due October 1st. The termination for convenience clause. The proxy holders. And at the bottom, in a font no larger than the rest, renewal will not be executed. Vendor relationship to wind down within 90 days. By Monday, I said, North Star Bio will notify the firm that it is not renewing. That's $2.2 million a year gone in October. A little over 60% of your billings, Grant, if you want to check Walter's math. I hold the proxies that make it final. Beacon and Rourke assigned me their votes in 2018. 14 pages, my name's on all of them. There is no vote to lose because I already have them. Grant sat down like his strings were cut. Laurel had gone the specific gray of someone recalculating their whole seating chart. Daniel, my Daniel, was staring at me, and for once he was not looking at the tablecloth. He was looking at me like he was seeing, for the first time in 7 years, the entire size of the woman he'd married barefoot on the sand. Courtney found her voice, and it came out as a whisper. And the whisper is the thing I'll remember on my deathbed. Iris, please, there are 38 people who work at that firm. Please. And there it was, the coward under the mask. All those years of which glass is yours, and when the numbers finally turned to face her, she did not reach for a rule. She reached for mercy from the trailer park girl. I let the silence do its work. My grandmother's garnet ring caught the chandelier. I twisted it once. I know exactly how many people work at that firm, Courtney, I said. 38. I know their jobs are real. I have never once in my life punished the innocent for what the powerful did to me. My mother cleaned rooms for $6.75 an hour, and she raised me better than that. I looked around the table, at Bess, who had tears standing in her eyes and the smallest, fiercest smile, at Danielle, wide-eyed by the door, at the Pinckneys, who would be dining out on this for a decade. So here's what happens, I said. The firm's 38 jobs are safe because I choose to make them safe, not because you're owed it. North Star's business stays on new terms Paula sends Monday, and Grant stays president in name only because from now on there will be an independent board seat and quarterly numbers that come to me. This firm has run for 2 years on money I chose to send it. It's going to keep running on money I choose to send it. The only thing that's changed tonight is that everyone at this table finally knows who's been choosing. I picked up my water glass, the correct one. I'd known which was mine my entire life, and I looked Courtney Vance dead in the eye. "You spent 7 years teaching me that I didn't belong at your table," I said. "I let you, because I felt sorry for how frightened you are. But you should know, it was always my table. I just hadn't turned over my cards." Then I sat down and I ate my sorbet, which was excellent, and I let dinner end. The check came, in a way. Not that night. That Monday, when Paula's letters went out, and the following spring when the dust settled into a new shape. The firm survived, exactly as I said it would. North Star Bio kept the account on a revised 3-year deal I structured myself at $2.4 million a year, with performance terms that actually made the shop better. Walter would have approved. All 38 jobs held. Grant kept his title and lost his illusions, which was probably the healthiest thing that ever happened to him. I took a board seat at Vance Brand Partners, and the quarterly numbers come to my inbox on the 15th, and the firm has not had a comparison to the Ravenels since. Laurel and Grant left the family Christmas rotation for a year and came back quieter. Laurel never apologized, but she also never again asked whether I knew which glass was mine. Some victories are just an absence of the old noise. Daniel and I had the hardest, best fight of our marriage the night of that dinner, in our kitchen, over a warm beer he'd forgotten to put back in the fridge with the ceiling fan ticking. He asked why I never told him what I was, what I held, what his mother had been humiliating all those years. I told him the truth, that I hadn't wanted to be loved for the size of my check, because I'd spent my childhood watching people get loved for that, and I'd promised myself I never would. And that I had needed, exactly once, to find out whether he'd stand next to me when the whole table turned. He put his forehead against mine and said, I looked at the tablecloth. I'll spend the rest of my life not looking at the tablecloth. We stayed, we chose it, and we've kept choosing it. And there is a difference between the two. And Courtney. This is the part people don't expect, so lean in. She came to my office on Broad Street 11 days later, without calling, in a plain gray cardigan I'd never seen, with no St. John and no Chardonnay. She sat in the chair across my desk, and she was smaller than I'd ever let myself see. She said she had started seeing a therapist named Dr. Ruth Fenimore twice a week because Bess had told her, Bess, the conscience of that whole family, that she was going to lose every person who mattered, one at a time, the way she'd lost Walter's warmth years before he died, and die alone in a house full of boxwoods and rules. I was cruel to you, Courtney said, because you frightened me. You didn't need us. You didn't need the club or the name or any of it. You had made yourself, and I had only ever inherited myself, and I could not stand next to that without making you smaller. She put her hands flat on my desk. They were shaking. That was the whole of it. It was never you. It was that I'd built my life on a set of rules, and you were proof they were only rules. It was, I think, the first true thing she'd ever said to me. I did not forgive her that day. Forgiveness that fast is just fear wearing a nicer dress. But I made a decision, my decision, from the top of the board with every card face up. I told her she was welcome at my table, not because she was owed it, because I choose who sits there now, and I would rather choose to build something than to guard a grudge for the next 30 years. Boundaries came with it, in writing, because I'm still me. No comments about my clothes, my manners, my mother, or my beginnings ever again, or the door closes and does not reopen. She agreed to all of it. She has kept to all of it for 3 years now, one Sunday at a time. Last month, we did a thing I never planned. Halyard had a strong year, and I've reached the age where money stops being a scoreboard and starts being a tool. So I endowed a scholarship at the College of Charleston, $250,000 in my mother's name. The Renata Kowalczyk Scholarship for first-generation students who wait tables to stay in school. I want some trailer park girl reaching for the wrong fork to end up owning the whole restaurant. We announced it at a lunch, a small one. Daniel, Bess, Paula, Vikram, and yes, Courtney, who asked to come and sat quietly and clapped harder than anyone. Bess stood up to toast. She lifted her glass, the water glass. She'd checked with me and we'd laughed. And she looked around the table and she said, "To Iris, who they took out of the trailer park." She paused and her voice cracked, and she got it out anyway. And who turned out to be the only one of us who knew, all along, exactly which table was hers. We all drank to that, Courtney included, her eyes wet, her cardigan plain. Afterward, on the sidewalk on King Street, in the light I actually like, that low gold Charleston afternoon light that makes even the potholes look forgiven, I stood twisting my grandmother's ring, the garnet catching the sun, the $1,200 ring that a woman in a coral knit had once mistaken for costume. And I understood, finally, what it had cost my mother to leave it to me, and what it had been trying to say the whole time. I used to think my worth was a number. The 600 million, the proxies, the 2.4 a year, the size of the check I could write or withhold. It's a good number. It bought me the room. But standing there in the gold light with the people who'd stayed, I finally got it right. A place at the table was never something I could be given or refused by Courtney or the club or anyone with an older name. It was something I had been carrying the entire time, on my own hand, in the ring, in the numbers, in the trailer park spine my mother rubbed down with Vicks and stubbornness. The moment you stop asking to be seated, they discover you were the one holding the seating chart all along.